Okay, we are back. Different topic. We have moved to Europe. So let's just give it a few seconds. I usually don't do two live streams just like that, one after the other. But yeah, I had a problem with not me, but some people had a problem with buffering um, at the other live stream there. So let's just give it a few seconds so that people can discover that I am on again. I'm going to make my point in a few seconds. As I said, we have moved to Europe. And yeah, crazy stuff is going on in Europe as well, of course. We have the war in Ukraine. And sabotage on infrastructure in Scandinavia, in the Baltic Sea. So yeah, crazy stuff. And there is a big push for anti-democracy. The title is a little bit not clickbaity, but it's people click on it and they expect me to come here with some talking points. That, and I will give them some other talking points for. But Andrew, member for 15 months. That's awesome. That is awesome. And thank you for your support. So I am sorry that we are going to have to stick to the topic now. And yeah. So first of all, what is democracy? Democracy is one of several makeups of a state where you have voting. People vote for either decisions like single decisions and slash or for who is going to represent them in some kind of parliament. And a democracy will usually have a constitution that those people who are voted into parliament are supposed to protect and uphold and rule according to. And I will mention some examples of democracies. Norway is a democracy. Sweden is a democracy. France is a democracy. The USA is a democracy, and so on. And I'm mentioning the USA especially because people, and especially people of a certain political leaning, they love to say that the USA is not a democracy, it's a constitutional republic. I just explained that a democracy, by definition, is a state where you have a process that involves voting. People vote. So, there is a big push against that system here in Europe. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't I see a super chat, Andrew? I think I did. So there is a big push against democracy here in Europe. Now, people will say that in mainstream media, and they will say, look at those right-wing parties. They are anti-democratic. But are they? Well, if you look back at history, fascist parties, fascist parties, they would typically get voted in. Well, typically, we all know about guy with the ugly little mustache, and they get voted in, and then after that, you don't have any more elections. But it's not anti-democratic if the people vote in far right or far left political parties. That's actually proof that democracy is working. And you may not like that, of course, but that's part of the game, right? You can't say that only the political parties that we like can be represented in the parliament, because then you don't have a democracy anymore. Now, what's this push for against democracy? Now, to explain that whole thing, I need to explain it. Okay, so in the in Europe we have EU, the European Union, and most of the European countries are members in the European Union. Norway is not, the UK is not, and some other nations are also outside of the European Union. It is extremely important to understand that Europe is not the EU, and EU is not Europe. Those two things are different. Those are not the same. Now, we have a war in Ukraine. We have a new government in the USA that is threatening people in Europe, nations in Europe. Well, Trump is, And people might say, no, it's just a negotiation tactic. But it doesn't matter, because you actually have to take the words of the American president serious. If he says something, we're going to act accordingly. And that's what people are doing. That's what governments in Europe are doing now, right now, as we are speaking. And what we are hearing now is that because of this new situation where Europe might be standing without the support of the USA, we need to strengthen our alliances within Europe. And here comes the push for anti-democracy, in my opinion. This whole situation is being used to convince people that the EU is the only way forward. That all the nations in Europe that are not part of the EU needs to join. They need to join the EU. The EU need to have an army. Well, that's coming anyway, very soon. And the EU should have a lot more power over the nations and over the peoples in those nations. Now, the EU is not democratic. It's a bureaucracy. So that's one thing that goes against democracy. The other thing is that the further, let's say you have some decisions being made here, and you have the people down here, right? The further distance between where the decisions are being made, and the people it affects, the less democracy you have. Okay, so that's why I believe in local democracy. I believe that people who actually live in the place where those rules and regulations are being implemented, those people should decide. So this distance that are that would, the distance, the physical distance, and ideological distance, and the cultural distance would mean that we would have less democracy. And there's a big push for this now. Politicians are, there is no secret here that Norwegian politicians in the main parties, they, not all of them, but it seems to be a majority, they really want Norway to be part of the EU. And I think it's because of personal reasons, but it's concerning, because we have seen what happens in Sweden. We have seen what's been happening in Denmark, and we have seen all the rules and regulations being forced upon them that are bad for them. And they can't do anything about it because they're part of the EU. Now, I'm not a supporter of the EU, as you can understand, but it's being used now. This whole thing is being used against democracy, in my opinion. The whole situation, and they're using Russia, so look at Russia. Are you not scared? You should be scared. And because you're so scared, you should support a strong EU. Now, of course, European countries. Now, I saw some numbers. There are some comments there. I suppose at this time of the day or night, there will be lots of Americans here, which is fine. But I saw some numbers concerning the military. Now, the EU military, it's not a small army. If EU gets control over the armies of the EU nations, and especially if Norway joins, and the UK, if the UK, let's face it, the UK is not part of the EU, but they're probably going to connect themselves closer to the EU in the near future, and I think that's already happening. So if all of these nations' armies working together is going to be, the numbers far, and this far outweigh the USA Army, by the way, if you didn't know. Manpower, number of tanks, and so on. The USA has a lot more nuclear weapons, but I think that the Europe has more than enough to nuke the entire planet. So this is building up now, and it's concerning because it goes in the wrong direction, doesn't it? We don't need more superpowers. We don't need more conflict. We don't need less democracy. We need more democracy. In the meaning that people on a local level should be allowed to decide what happens in their local community. And it seems to go in the opposite direction of that. So that's why I think that what we are seeing now is a push for anti-democracy. The same headline you will see in mainstream media in Europe now, and they are talking about far right, as they call it, political parties. But as I said, you may not like those parties, but the fact that people vote for them is not anti-democratic. It's proof that we actually still have a democracy. So um, uh, I will only respond to comments that make sense now. Um, yes, exactly, Trond. Trond says European countries could team up and be allies well without the EU. I think that would have worked out much better. I absolutely agree. um, let's see. Yeah, the whole Ukraine business is a business, and it's yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, Andrew says EU is moving towards something like the Soviet bloc. Well, that's an interesting perspective, I think. Um, let's see here. No, I don't think we should have a monarchy in Norway at all. Um, well, thank you, Sandra. That's kind of you. Um, let's see. Yeah. So we will see what happens. But I just thought I would mention this because it's I'm not the only one saying this, but when you have politicians using the big scare in the East, Russia, and now also the big scare in the West, which is Trump's USA, and they point at those and they say that we are like in the middle, we're in the middle there, and we need to be strong, and we need to be within the EU and all of that. No, I don't think that's the way forward, and I think that, as I said before, the way forward is through trade across borders, through exchanging, uh, through cooperation, not through conflict. That's what I'm trying to say. uh, yeah, Angela, thank you for mentioning that. But like is good if you like what I'm doing here. And yeah, war is big business, absolutely. Um, yeah, and diplomacy is, as you say there, Jed. Diplomacy is what we should aim for. We shouldn't. I mean, when you get to the point where you need weapons and threats of violence to deal with other nations, and to when you do that, you kind of lost already, because we should be better than that. But I mean, we're still primitive, aren't we? We're still killing each other. We're still sending our young, those who should have the entire life ahead of them, to wars. Isn't that crazy when you think about it? Wars for what? Um, when you look at the corruption, when you look at the money laundering, when you look at the whole business that is a war, and you still have people supporting that. It's crazy how we learned nothing. Well, probably not. And yeah, and I think the reason why there is such a disrespect now in well, I can only speak for Norway. I haven't been outside of Norway during the last 2 or 3 weeks, so but the level of disrespect for the USA is very sad to see. People are laughing, people are shaking their head, um, and and it's all because of the threat of violence coming from Trump. So that does something to people. I think it's because it's seen as primitive, because it is. Um, and I can't emphasize this enough, but the word is disrespect. Um, and it's ironic, when you hear these people, they are saying that we will use our army and we will force our will upon others, and and then they will respect us. It doesn't work that way. Well, in some cultures maybe, but in Scandinavia it's the opposite, and I think that goes for most Europeans. So yeah, it's a sad situation that we are in now. It's a sad situation, um, and I hope that things will get better. I think it's unfair to disrespect, the USA, um, like people are now doing. People are kind of, we have this tendency to view everyone in a nation or in a culture as the same, which we know, intellectually that's not the case. That is not the case. But it very quickly goes it moves into that, the stereotypical view of a nation. Um, and I saw it with Russia, and it didn't take long. It did not take long before people became, and I have to say this, racist towards Russians. Well, it's a nationality, it's not a race, but you get what I'm trying to say here. Um, and I'm kind of seeing the same, not as bad, but kind of seeing the same when it comes to Americans now. And it's unfair. I don't like to see it, but what people are saying, they're laughing, they're saying that, oh, Americans are stupid, Americans think they own the world, and I don't like to hear that. It's unfair, um, because they are actually talking about a very tiny minority of partly corrupt people in charge there. So, um, Yeah. So it needs to stop. It's not good. Um, and yeah, because when that disrespect, it that disrespect for an entire nation, which we are seeing now, is it affects international politics as well. Because this is not really what I wanted to talk about, but people will vote for those politicians whom they like, and let's say this growing disrespect of the USA, you know, um, if this is allowed to continue, people will vote for those politicians who speak badly about the USA. Um, and hence it will affect international politics. Um, yeah, Kat is saying that it's simple-minded and wrong. The US is a vast and multicultural place. Yes, I understand that. I'm just saying I'm just telling you what I am observing now. Um, and if you want to know, it seems like it was the thing with Greenland that did it. That was the drop that made the glass spill over. And people were like, "Who the fuck do you think you are?" You know. Um, so yeah, what a mess. You know, what a mess. If people could only talk with each other and communicate and listen instead of just trying to show off and be the best and strongest and you know so yeah, Wood Elf says words only, actions matter. I think words matter actually. I think it's important to talk, to communicate. um, so Yuval says we need to go to Mars. Mars. How do you say that in English? March, not March. That's a month. March. Um, I don't see why people would go there. It doesn't seem like a nice place. Mars. Okay, I don't want to go there. Why don't we take a little bit better care of this planet where we are actually now? Um, Mars. In Norwegian, we say dra til Mars. Jeg vil ikke dra til Mars. I don't want to go to Mars. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah. No, I think this is enough for now. Second live stream, one after the other. Hope you enjoy. And just doing my best to share some, hopefully, common sense. I might not get it right all of the time, but I'm doing my best. Okay. Have a wonderful evening or morning, whatever it is, and we'll talk soon.